The transport shuttle's engines went quiet as it docked with the research station. David Cole grabbed his equipment bag and waited for the airlock to finish cycling. He had traveled 3 months to reach this place, and his body still felt heavy from the artificial gravity adjustments. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. A tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms stood waiting. Her face held the kind of smile that barely hid impatience. "David Cole, I am Director Rin. Welcome to Harmony 7. She looked at his bag with curiosity. "What is all that equipment?" David lifted the heavy bag slightly. "Standard safety gear from Earth. Scent blockers, calming compounds, pressure suits rated for extreme conditions." Rin's smile grew wider, though her eyes showed confusion. "Safety gear? Mr. Cole, this is a xenobiology research station. We study peaceful creatures from civilized worlds. You will find our work quite tame compared to whatever adventures you imagine." Another human appeared behind Rin. She was shorter than David, with dark hair tied back in a practical style. "I'm Paula Ruiz, communications officer. Been here 2 years now." She shook his hand and gave him a look that seemed to say, "We'll talk later." Rin led them through clean white corridors lined with observation windows. Behind the glass, various alien creatures moved about in comfortable habitats. David saw something like a 6-legged deer, a floating jellyfish that glowed softly, and a small furry animal that played with a ball. "Beautiful facility," David said, though his trained eye noticed something odd. None of these creatures showed any defensive behaviors, no territorial displays, no aggression signals. They were all remarkably calm. "We house specimens from 47 different worlds," Rin explained with obvious pride, each one carefully maintained in conditions matching their home environments. "Our success rate for keeping them healthy is 98%. They entered a large briefing room where several other aliens waited. An insectoid being with green shell plating nodded to David. 2 smaller aliens that looked almost like upright lizards whispered to each other. "This is Drev, our security chief," Rin said, gesturing to the insectoid. "And these are members of our xenobiology team." David set down his bag and sat. Rin activated a display showing charts and images. "Now let me explain how we operate here at Harmony 7. Unlike the primitive methods you may know from Earth, we use advanced stasis fields and behavioral monitoring to ensure our specimens remain content and safe." "Primitive methods?" David asked carefully. "Oh, I mean no offense," Rin said quickly. "But Earth is a very young member of the galactic community. Your understanding of xenobiology is still developing. Here we have perfected the science over thousands of years." One of the lizard-like aliens spoke up. "We heard rumors about Earth. They say it is a dangerous world where creatures fight and kill each other constantly." "Surely that cannot be true." David thought about how to answer. "Earth has a competitive ecosystem. Predators hunt prey. Territory is defended. Resources are fought over. It made our evolution challenging." The room fell silent. Then Rin laughed. It was a musical sound, but clearly dismissive. "Deathworlders are a myth, Mr. Cole. Every world in the galactic community developed intelligent life through cooperation, not through violence. Your Earth must have been the same. Perhaps your legends exaggerate the dangers." "I've personally worked with animals that could kill me in seconds," David said flatly. "Bears, big cats, venomous snakes. Even our herbivores can be deadly if threatened." The other aliens exchanged glances that David recognized. They thought he was either joking or delusional. Paula leaned forward. "Director, perhaps we should explain to David about how different our evolutionary paths are." Rin nodded. "Of course. You see, Mr. Cole, in civilized space, no world has these predators you describe. The most dangerous animal on my homeworld is a creature roughly the size of your hand. It has a mild bite that causes itching. That is the extent of danger in nature throughout known space." David felt a chill run down his spine. These people had no concept of real danger. They had never faced an animal that saw them as food. They had never needed to develop the instincts that every human child learned. "Director, I need to understand something," he said slowly. "If a dangerous creature somehow got loose in this station, what would your protocols be?" Drev answered. "We would activate containment fields, use bright lights and sound to guide it to an empty section, then peacefully return it to its habitat." "Bright lights and loud sounds?" "Yes. They work on every species we have encountered." David started to explain why that would be a terrible idea for a frightened predator, but Paula caught his eye and shook her head slightly. "Later," her expression said. The briefing continued. Rin showed him his quarters, his work schedule, and the various laboratories he would have access to. Everything was efficient and well organized. It was also completely unprepared for anything actually dangerous. As they finished the tour, alarms began sounding. Not emergency alarms, but notification chimes. Rin checked a display on her wrist. Ah, interesting. We have an unscheduled transport arriving. The manifest says it carries a specimen, but the classification is marked confidential. She looked genuinely excited. This is unusual. Confidential specimens are quite rare. David felt his stomach tighten. What kind of specimen? It does not say, but any creature important enough for confidential status must be remarkable indeed. Rin started walking toward the docking bays. Come, let us welcome our new arrival. As they walked, Paula fell into step beside David. She spoke quietly. Listen carefully. These people are brilliant scientists, but they have never encountered real danger. Their homeworlds are basically paradise gardens. When they say their most dangerous animal is the size of your hand, they are not exaggerating. That's insane, David whispered back. How did they build a civilization without facing any evolutionary pressure? Different path. They evolved through cooperation and resource efficiency, not through predation and competition. They literally cannot imagine what you grew up with. And now something confidential is arriving? Paula's face was grim. That's what worries me too. They reached the docking bay as the transport ship connected to the station. Through the windows, David could see a massive container being loaded onto a cargo platform. It was covered in symbols he recognized from his Earth training. Biohazard warnings, containment breach protocols, extreme danger indicators. The aliens around him saw the same symbols and looked mildly curious. To them, they were just interesting foreign markings. They had no idea what they meant. David's hands began to sweat. Whatever was in that container, it was something the transporters had feared. And this station full of brilliant, naive scientists was about to bring it inside. Director, he said carefully, those symbols on the container. Do you know what they represent? Rin glanced at the markings. I assume they are transport identification codes. Why do you ask? David looked at Paula. She had gone pale. She saw what he saw. No reason, David lied. Just curious. The container began moving into the station, carried by automated systems. Inside, something scraped against the metal walls. The sound made David's primitive hindbrain scream warnings that these aliens could never hear. Rin smiled. I wonder what fascinating creature we are about to meet. David said nothing. He was too busy calculating how many people might die if his worst fears proved correct. The container sat in the center of the receiving bay like a metal coffin. David stood with the other researchers as automated arms worked to open the seals. Each click and hiss of releasing pressure made his muscles tense. Dr. Finn arrived, his feathers ruffled with excitement. The avian scientist had bright yellow plumage and quick movements that reminded David of a bird watching for seeds. Perfect timing. I was informed this specimen came from Survey Team 93. They discovered a previously unknown world in the outer rim. What kind of world? David asked. Uninhabited by intelligent life but rich with biodiversity. The team collected several specimens for study. This one was flagged as particularly interesting. Dr. Finn checked his data pad. They call it a ravager. The name made David's blood run cold. Survey teams did not usually name creatures after what they did. They used scientific classifications or descriptive terms. Calling something a ravager meant it had done something to earn that title. The container's final seal released. The front panel split open slowly, revealing a reinforced glass cage inside. Through the glass, David saw movement. The creature was massive. It stood nearly 3 meters tall even in its crouched position. Its body combined features David recognized from multiple Earth predators. The bulk and power of a grizzly bear, the segmented armor plating of a mantis, the sleek muscle structure of a wolf. Its head held 6 eyes arranged in a pattern that gave it nearly complete vision. 2 sets of limbs ended in claws that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Magnificent, Dr. Finn breathed. David was already cataloging danger signs. The creature's eyes were constantly scanning. Its body position showed coiled tension. The claws were flexing rhythmically, a behavior David had seen in big cats preparing to strike. Most concerning were the sensory organs along its neck that kept twitching and flattening. What are those? He pointed. Electromagnetic sensors, Dr. Finn explained. The Ravager can detect energy fields and electrical signals. Remarkable evolutionary adaptation. And you're going to keep it here? In this station? Rin looked at him with that same patient smile. Of course. Where else would we study it? David approached the cage carefully. The Ravager's eyes tracked him instantly. He stopped moving, keeping his body language neutral. The creature watched him for a long moment, then made a low sound that vibrated through the floor. It is trying to communicate, one of the lizard scientists said happily. That's not communication, David said quietly. That's a threat display. Mr. Cole, please do not project your Earth prejudices onto this creature, Rin said. Just because it looks intimidating does not mean it is dangerous, David wanted to scream. The Ravager was showing every sign of an apex predator. The way it moved, the way it watched, the constant assessment of everything around it. This was not some peaceful herbivore. This was a hunter. Director, may I see the survey team's report on this creature? Certainly. Rin handed him a data pad. David read quickly. His fears grew with every line. The Ravager had been found feeding on the remains of another large predator. It had killed that predator in what the team described as an efficient and brutal manner. It had then defended its kill by attacking the survey team's drones, destroying 3 before they managed to contain it. The team recommended maximum security protocols and warned that the creature showed unprecedented aggression and strategic thinking. Did you read this? David asked, holding up the pad. Yes, fascinating, is it not? A creature with such advanced hunting behaviors. It destroyed 3 drones. It killed another predator. The team specifically warned about aggression. Dr. Finn waved a wing dismissively. The survey team was inexperienced with large fauna. They probably startled it. Here, with proper care and a calm environment, the Ravager will settle down. Where are you planning to house it? Containment Lab 7. It has the largest habitat space available. Can I see the specifications? They walked to Lab 7 while automated systems moved the Ravager's cage. David reviewed the containment setup and felt sick. It was designed for large, peaceful creatures. The walls were standard reinforced plastic. The containment field was a basic energy barrier meant to discourage animals from wandering, not to stop something that wanted out. The environmental controls would keep the Ravager comfortable, but there were no backup systems, no fail-safes, no emergency protocols. This will not hold that creature, David said bluntly. Mr. Cole, that containment field can hold a pressure of 5,000 newtons. Nothing we have studied has ever come close to breaching it. Because you've never studied anything that wanted to breach it. The Ravager's cage arrived. Automated systems began transferring it to the containment area. David watched the creature's behavior carefully. It was not exploring its new space with curiosity. It was mapping it with strategic precision, looking for weaknesses, testing the barriers with small touches of its claws. I need to implement additional security measures, David said. Backup containment fields, reinforced walls, emergency lockdown protocols. That seems excessive. Director, I am begging you. That creature is stressed, frightened, and looking for escape routes. Everything in its behavior tells me it will try to break out. Rin's patience was fading. Mr. Cole, I respect that you come from a world with different experiences. But here at Harmony 7, we have successfully contained hundreds of species using these exact methods. Your paranoia, while perhaps understandable given your background, is not helpful. I'm not being paranoid. I'm being realistic. If you cannot adapt to our protocols, perhaps this assignment is not suitable for you. David felt the threat in those words. He could push harder and lose his position here, or he could back down and hope he was wrong. He looked at the Ravager again. It had stopped moving and was now perfectly still, watching them. That stillness was worse than aggression. It meant the creature was thinking, planning. Fine, he said quietly. I'll follow your protocols. Excellent. I knew you would be reasonable. Rin smiled and left with Dr. Finn. Paula stayed behind. You think it's going to break out? I know it's going to break out. The only question is when. David pointed at the containment field. See how the energy signature pulses? That's painful to the Ravager's sensors. Every pulse is like someone shining a bright light in your eyes. It's being tortured by the very system meant to keep it safe. Why don't they see that? Because they've never needed to. Their animals don't have those kinds of sensors. They don't think about pain responses or stress behaviors. He ran a hand through his hair. That creature comes from a world like Earth, I'd bet anything. High gravity, competitive ecosystem, evolutionary pressure from multiple predator species. It spent its whole life fighting to survive. and now it's trapped in a box that hurts it. What do we do? I'm going to sleep here, near the lab. When it breaks out, and it will, someone needs to be close enough to respond. David, if you're right about how dangerous it is, being close won't help. It will kill you. He looked at the Ravager. It looked back. For a moment, he swore he saw understanding in those alien eyes. Maybe, but I have to try. Over the next 3 days, David barely left the area. He watched the Ravager constantly, documenting its behavior. The creature was methodical. It tested different sections of the containment field, probing for weaknesses. It timed the guard patrols. It measured the distance to the exits. It was planning an escape with more intelligence than any non-sapient creature should possess. He reported everything to Rin. She thanked him politely and did nothing. Other staff began avoiding him. He heard whispers. The paranoid human. The nervous newcomer. The one who could not adapt. His reputation was dying, but he could not make himself leave the area. On the third night, Paola brought him food. You look terrible. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see that creature getting loose. The station thinks you're overreacting. The station has never seen anything die. He took the food gratefully. Paola, how many death worlds has the galactic community found? Including Earth? 3. The other 2 were quarantined before contact was established. Why? Because the survey teams were terrified. They found worlds where everything was trying to kill everything else. They saw animals that hunted in packs, plants that trapped prey, ecosystems built on violence. It was so alien to them that they sealed the planets and left. And then they found Earth. And you humans seemed friendly enough that they thought maybe they'd been wrong about the others. She paused. Were they wrong? I don't know. But I know that creature in there is from one of those worlds, and we're treating it like it's harmless. The lights dimmed for station night cycle. David settled against the wall, trying to rest but keeping his eyes on the containment area. The Ravager was pacing now, moving back and forth in a pattern. It had been doing that for 6 hours, then it stopped. The creature stood perfectly still in the center of its enclosure. Its sensory organs were flat against its neck. Its claws extended fully. Every muscle in its body tensed. No, David whispered. Not yet. The Ravager turned its head and looked directly at him. Then it charged the containment field with explosive speed. The impact shook the entire lab. Alarms began screaming. The energy barrier held, but barely. Cracks appeared in the reinforced glass. David was already running for the emergency panel. Paola, activate station-wide alert. It's happening. The Ravager hit the field again. This time something broke. Sparks flew. The barrier flickered. All personnel, this is an emergency. Paola's voice came over the speakers. Containment breach in Lab 7. This is not a drill. The third impact shattered the field completely. The Ravager stepped through the broken barrier and into the station proper. It looked around once, oriented itself, and then began moving with terrifying purpose toward the residential sections, where 200 sleeping people had no idea death was coming for them. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the corridors as the Ravager ripped through a sealed door like it was paper. David ran behind it, his emergency kit bouncing against his hip, his breath coming in gasps. The creature was not just escaping. It was hunting. Security teams arrived from 3 directions. Drev led them, his insectoid body moving with confidence that came from never facing real danger. They carried devices that projected bright lights and loud sounds. Standard herding equipment for peaceful animals. Wait, David shouted. Don't do that, too late. The lights activated, blazing bright white. The sounds blasted out, high-pitched wails designed to startle and confuse. Every single tactic was exactly wrong for a frightened predator. The Ravager spun on them. Its sensory organs flared out, overwhelmed by the assault. Its eyes went wide. And then it did what any cornered predator would do. It attacked. The creature moved faster than David thought possible for something so large. It covered 10 meters in less than 2 seconds. The first security officer went down with a scream, claws raking across their shoulder. The second tried to run and was knocked aside like a toy. Drev himself barely dodged a strike that would have split him open. Retreat, Drev shouted, and they scattered. The Ravager stood over the injured officers, breathing hard, looking confused. It had not wanted to hurt them. David could see that in its body language. But they had attacked its already overwhelmed senses, and instinct had taken over. Now it was more stressed than before. More dangerous. The creature turned and continued moving. David checked the station map on his wrist display. The residential sections were straight ahead. If the Ravager reached them, the confined spaces and sleeping people would create a massacre. He ran ahead, taking a maintenance tunnel that cut through several sections. His lungs burned. His legs ached. But he reached the main corridor before the creature did. He stood alone in the wide passage between the Ravager and 200 innocent lives. "What are you doing?" Paula's voice crackled in his earpiece. "David, get out of there." "Can't. Someone has to stop it. It will kill you." "Maybe." He could hear the Ravager approaching. The scrape of claws on metal. The heavy breathing. The sound of something large and powerful moving with purpose. David opened his emergency kit and pulled out the tools he hoped would save his life. Scent blockers went on his wrists and neck. They would reduce his biological signature, make him seem less like prey. He pulled out a small device the size of a coin and held it ready. The energy dampener had cost him 6 months' salary. Right now it was worth every credit. The Ravager rounded the corner. Up close it was even more terrifying. Each claw was as long as David's hand. Its armored hide looked thick enough to stop bullets. 6 eyes focused on him with intelligence that was almost human. This was not a mindless beast. This was a thinking, feeling creature that had been pushed too far. David made himself small. He bent his knees slightly, lowered his shoulders, kept his arms loose at his sides. Every instinct screamed at him to run. He ignored those instincts. Running would trigger the chase reflex. Running would mean death. The Ravager took a step closer, then another. It was testing him, trying to understand why this prey was not fleeing. David started speaking. His voice was low and steady, barely above a whisper. "Easy. Nobody's going to hurt you. I know you're scared. I know you're in pain, but I can help." The creature tilted its head. The words meant nothing to it, but the tone carried meaning. Non-threatening. Calm. Safe. On the cameras, someone was shouting over the station speakers. "He's just standing there. Why isn't he running?" Rin's voice high with panic. "Mr. Cole, evacuate immediately." "That's an order." David ignored them all. He kept his eyes lowered, not making direct eye contact. Direct eye contact was a challenge. He kept breathing slowly, controlling his fear. Animals could smell fear. They could hear it in breathing patterns and heart rates, in the tiny sounds a body made when it was terrified. The Ravager moved closer. 3 meters away. Close enough that David could smell it. A mix of musk and something sharp like ozone. Close enough to see the patterns on its armored hide. Complex and beautiful. Close enough that if it decided to strike, he would not even have time to scream. 2 meters. David's hands were steady, but only because he had trained for situations like this his whole life. On Earth, you learned to face danger or you did not survive long. Every human carried that legacy in their genes. The knowledge of when to fight, when to flee, and when to simply stand your ground and hope the predator decided you were not worth the trouble. 1 meter. The Ravager stopped. Its breath washed over David, hot and smelling of something like copper. It made a sound lower than before, not a threat display. A question, maybe. What are you? Why aren't you afraid? Except David was afraid. He was more afraid than he had ever been in his life. But fear and panic were different things. He could be terrified and still think clearly. That was the human gift. That was what millions of years of surviving on Earth had taught his species. "I'm going to move my hand now," David said softly, nice and slow. "No threats. Just trying to help you." He reached for the energy dampener. The movement was glacial, telegraphed, obvious. The Ravager watched his hand track toward the kit. Its claws flexed. David kept moving. His fingers closed around the device. "This is going to make things better. That field that was hurting your sensors, remember? This will stop the pain." He activated the dampener. The device hummed to life, creating a bubble of energy that canceled out the painful frequencies the containment field had been producing. The effect was immediate. The Ravager's sensory organs, which had been pressed flat against its neck, slowly lifted. The tension in its body decreased. Its eyes, which had been wide with stress, narrowed to a normal state. The pain that had been driving it into increasingly aggressive behavior simply stopped. The creature made a sound David had not heard before. Something like a sigh mixed with a purr. Relief. "Yeah," David whispered. "I know, it hurt. You didn't understand why. Nobody was listening when you tried to tell them." He took a step forward. The Ravager did not move. Another step. The creature watched him but showed no signs of aggression. David was now close enough to touch it. "Everyone's watching," Paula said quietly in his earpiece. "The whole station. They can't believe what they're seeing." David raised his hand. Slowly, carefully, giving the Ravager every chance to move away or reject the contact. His hand rose higher, higher, and then he pressed his palm against the armored hide of the creature's chest. The armor was warm. He could feel the massive heart beating underneath, fast but steady. The Ravager looked down at his hand, then back at David's face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the creature lowered its head slightly and leaned into the contact. David began to stroke the armored plates gently. His movements were firm but not aggressive, confident but not dominating. This was not petting. This was communication through touch. "I am not a threat." "You are not a threat. We can both be safe here." "Impossible," someone breathed over the speakers. But it was not impossible. It was just understanding. On Earth, humans had learned to communicate with wolves and turned them into dogs. They had learned to understand horses and ride them. They had learned to read the behaviors of animals far more dangerous than themselves and found ways to coexist. This was the same skill applied to an alien creature. The Ravager's breathing slowed. Its aggressive posture relaxed. After a few minutes, it actually sat down, the way a big cat might. It was still massive, still dangerous, still capable of killing David in a heartbeat. But it had chosen not to. It had chosen trust instead. David kept one hand on the creature and started humming. It was a low sound, rhythmic and calming, a tune his mother had hummed when he was scared as a child. The Ravager's eyes began to close halfway, the universal sign of a relaxed animal. "David," Paula said. "What now?" "Now I take it home. Back to the containment area. But we do it right this time. The containment system is destroyed. Then we build a new one that doesn't hurt it, one that meets its needs instead of fighting against them." He started to move, keeping contact with the Ravager the whole time. The creature stood and walked beside him. To anyone watching, it looked like the most dangerous predator in the galaxy had become a tame pet. But David knew better. This was not taming. This was respect. This was understanding. This was two creatures from violent worlds recognizing each other and choosing peace. They walked through the corridor slowly. Security teams followed at a distance, ready to intervene but not daring to get close. Scientists stood in doorways, watching with expressions of shock. Director Rin stood frozen at an observation window, her forearms hanging limp with disbelief. David walked on. One hand always on the Ravager, always maintaining that connection. He spoke constantly, his voice a continuous stream of calm sounds. The words did not matter. The tone was everything. "It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you now. We're going somewhere safe. Somewhere better. I promise." The Ravager rumbled softly, a sound David chose to interpret as agreement. It took an hour to reach the containment area. An hour of slow walking, of constant contact, of building trust with every step. When they arrived, David looked at the destroyed lab and shook his head. "Paula, I need a new space. Somewhere bigger, and I need access to environmental controls. You can have Lab 12. It's twice the size of 7. "Good. Tell the engineering team I'm redesigning everything. No more painful energy fields. No more protocols designed for peaceful animals. We're doing this the Earth way." He looked at Director Rin, who had followed them. "I'll need approval for significant changes to station containment systems." Rin nodded slowly. She looked like someone whose entire worldview had just shattered. "You have it. Whatever you need." David worked through the night. The Ravager stayed close to him, never more than a few meters away. It watched as he reconfigured the containment area, removing the painful energy barriers and replacing them with simple physical walls that the creature could see and understand. He adjusted the lighting to levels that would not hurt its sensitive eyes. He modified the environmental controls to match the conditions of the creature's homeworld as closely as possible. When he was done, he led the Ravager into the new enclosure. The creature explored it carefully, testing each surface, examining every corner. Then it found a spot near the transparent viewing wall and settled down. David sat on the other side of the wall. The Ravager positioned itself so it was directly across from him, only the transparent barrier between them. It made a low sound, almost content. "Yes," David said, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "I'll be here." "You're not alone." He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. Within minutes, he was asleep. The Ravager watched over him through the barrier, a predator guarding the one creature who had bothered to understand it. Sunlight from the nearby star streamed through Lab 12's viewing windows. David woke with a stiff neck and sore muscles from sleeping against the wall. The first thing he saw was the Ravager, still lying in the same position, watching him with calm eyes. "Morning," David said, stretching carefully. The creature made a soft rumbling sound. Over the past week, David had started to understand its vocalizations. This one meant something like acknowledgement. A greeting without words. He stood and checked the environmental controls. Everything was stable. The Ravager's stress markers, which he monitored constantly through non-invasive sensors, showed healthy levels. The creature was eating regularly now. Its wounds from the escape attempt were healing well. More importantly, it was teaching him. Every day, David learned more about how it communicated. The position of its sensory organs indicated mood. Flared out meant alert or stressed. Halfway extended meant curious. Flat against the neck meant either extreme fear or deep relaxation, depending on other body signals. Its 6 eyes could focus independently or together. When all 6 focused on something, it meant intense interest or preparation to strike. When they wandered separately, it meant the creature felt safe enough to not be hyper-vigilant. The claws were another indicator. Extended claws meant ready to fight or defend. Retracted meant calm. But there was a third position David had discovered, where the claws were partly extended and flexing rhythmically. That meant the Ravager was thinking, processing something complex. It was the equivalent of a human tapping their fingers while considering a problem. Paula arrived with breakfast. She had started bringing him meals every day, knowing he would forget to eat if left alone. "How's our friend?" "Good. Watch this." David approached the containment wall and pressed his hand against it. The Ravager stood, walked over and pressed its own clawed hand against the other side of the transparent barrier. They stayed that way for a moment, a gesture of connection that had become their morning ritual. "That's beautiful," Paula said softly. "It's trust." David moved to the access panel. "I'm going inside today. Are you sure that's safe?" "Safe? No, but necessary. The Ravager needs more than just a comfortable cage. It needs interaction. It needs mental stimulation. It's too intelligent to just sit in there forever." He had spent the week preparing. He wore protective gear, not armor, but clothing designed to show he respected the creature's power without fearing it. He carried tools that would interest the Ravager without threatening it. And he had practiced every movement until it was smooth and confident. The door cycled open. David stepped inside. The Ravager watched him enter but did not approach. It was waiting, David realized, giving him space to acclimate. The creature understood boundaries. "Hey there," David said, using his calm voice. "Just coming to visit. Maybe work on some enrichment activities." He pulled out a complex puzzle box designed for intelligent animals. On Earth, similar boxes were used for primates and dolphins. This one was made of metal and had multiple compartments that required different strategies to open. Inside each compartment was a treat, a piece of the nutrient-rich food the Ravager preferred. David set the box down and backed away. The Ravager approached it cautiously, sniffed it with its complex sensory organs, then began investigating. Within minutes, it had figured out the first compartment. It used its claws with surprising delicacy, manipulating the mechanism until it clicked open. "Smart," David said. "Really smart." The Ravager looked at him, then back at the box. It opened the second compartment, then the third. The fourth one was more complex, requiring 2 actions to be performed simultaneously. The creature studied it, made that thoughtful claw-flexing gesture, then tried several approaches. On the 5th attempt, it succeeded. David pulled out another enrichment tool, a ball with moving parts inside that made interesting sounds. He rolled it across the floor. The Ravager watched it, curious. Then it reached out and batted the ball back toward David. "Play." The creature wanted to play. They spent an hour interacting. David would introduce a new object or activity. The Ravager would investigate it. Sometimes they would engage with it together, like when David held one end of a tough rope and the Ravager pulled on the other end in a gentle tug of war. Sometimes the creature would show David something it found interesting, like the way light reflected off its armor at certain angles. It was during these sessions that David understood the terrible tragedy of what had happened. This was not a mindless monster. This was a being with curiosity, playfulness, and the capacity for genuine connection. It had been ripped from its home, trapped in a painful cage, and driven to violence by fear and stress. And everyone had blamed the creature instead of the system that failed it. Dr. Finn started attending the sessions, taking notes furiously. Remarkable. It shows problem-solving skills comparable to many sapient species. It shows emotional intelligence too, David added. Watch how it modulates its behavior based on my reactions. If I show any sign of discomfort, it immediately backs off and gives me space. It's reading my body language as well as I'm reading its. Other scientists began to gather. They watched through the viewing wall as David worked with the Ravager. Some looked amazed. Some looked ashamed. All of them were learning that their understanding of animal behavior had been dangerously incomplete. Director Rin attended one session and stayed for 3 hours. Afterward, she asked to speak with David privately. They sat in her office. She looked tired, older than she had when David first arrived. I owe you an apology, Mr. Cole, a serious one. You couldn't have known. That's not an excuse. You told us the containment was inadequate. You warned us about the creature's stress. You explained the danger. We dismissed you because your experience didn't match our expectations. She folded her hands. 3 security officers were injured because of my arrogance. The entire station was put at risk. People could have died, but they didn't. Because of you. Because you had skills and knowledge we didn't even know existed. She pulled up a star chart on her display. I've been researching the world where the Ravager was found. You were right. It's remarkably similar to Earth. High gravity, extreme weather patterns, multiple competing apex predators. The survey team had flagged it as a potential death world, but hadn't confirmed it yet. David looked at the data. The planet was almost identical to Earth in its evolutionary pressures. How many worlds like this exist? That we know of? At least a dozen scattered through known space. Probably many more undiscovered. She looked at him seriously. The galactic community has avoided these worlds because we don't understand them. We find them frightening. Alien in ways that other aliens are not. Because violence is alien to you. Yes, our evolution was shaped by cooperation and efficiency. Yours was shaped by competition and survival. We developed intelligence to share resources better. You developed it to outwit predators and prey. She paused. Neither path is wrong. They're just different. But we've been treating your path as primitive because we didn't understand it. What happens now? Now we learn. The Galactic Council has reviewed the footage of your interaction with the Ravager. They're creating a new department to study high-pressure evolution worlds. They want you to lead it. David blinked. Me? You have knowledge the galaxy needs. There are more worlds like Earth out there, more creatures like the Ravager, and we have no idea how to coexist with them safely. You do? She smiled slightly. Also, they're terrified of another escape situation and want the human who can calm Death World predators in charge of security protocols. I'm not sure I'm qualified to lead an entire department. Perhaps not yet. But you're the only one qualified to teach others what you know. We need to learn your skills, Mr. Cole. We need to understand what you understand. David thought about the Ravager. About Earth? About all the humans who had learned to read animal behavior because their survival depended on it. That knowledge had always seemed primitive to the wider galaxy. Now it was valuable. I have conditions, he said. Name them. Earth can't be dismissed as a backward world anymore. My people have skills and knowledge that took millions of years to develop. We're not lucky primitives who got smart enough to join the galaxy. We're survivors who earned every bit of our intelligence through hardship. Agreed. Second, any creature from a high-pressure world gets proper protocols immediately. No more assumptions that they're like other animals. No more painful containment systems. We treat them with the respect they deserve. Agreed. Third, I want to bring in more humans. Other specialists who understand different aspects of Earth ecology. Marine biologists who work with sharks. Herpetologists who handle venomous snakes. People who understand predators from professional experience, not academic theory. I'll authorize recruitment immediately. Rin stood and extended a hand. Welcome to your new position, Director Cole. David shook her hand, still processing what had just happened. I need to check on the Ravager. Of course. But David, one question. When you stood in front of that creature, knowing it could kill you, what were you thinking? He considered his answer carefully. I was thinking that it was scared and in pain. That it didn't want to hurt anyone but didn't know how to make the pain stop. I was thinking that if I could just show it that not everything in this place was a threat, maybe it would choose peace over violence. He paused, and I was thinking about every human who ever faced down a predator and survived because they understood instead of feared. Understanding instead of fear, Rin repeated. Perhaps that's the lesson we all need to learn. David returned to Lab 12. The Ravager was waiting near the door as if it had known he would come back. He entered the enclosure and sat down. The creature approached and, in a gesture that had become familiar over the past week, gently rested its massive head against David's shoulder. He reached up and stroked the armored plates, feeling the warmth of the creature beneath. Looks like we're going to be working together for a while. That okay with you? The Ravager made its contented rumbling sound. Yeah, me too, David smiled. You know what the best part is? They're starting to understand. Not just about you, but about where you come from. About how there are different kinds of intelligence, different kinds of strength. He continued stroking the armor gently. You're not a monster. You're just a survivor like me, like every human, like every creature from worlds that demanded we be tough or die. Through the viewing wall, scientists gathered to watch. Not with fear anymore, but with curiosity and respect. They were beginning to learn that the galaxy was bigger and more complex than they had imagined. That Deathworlds were not myths but realities, and that the creatures from those worlds, human or otherwise, had valuable lessons to teach. David sat with the Ravager for hours, both of them comfortable in the silence. Two beings from violent worlds finding peace and understanding. It was a small moment in a vast galaxy, but it was also the beginning of something important. A bridge between different kinds of evolution, different kinds of intelligence, different ways of surviving in an infinite universe. 3 months had passed since the Ravager's escape. David stood in the newly expanded research wing, watching construction crews install advanced containment systems based on his designs. Everything was different now. The walls were reinforced but transparent, allowing creatures to see their surroundings. The energy fields were adjustable to accommodate different sensory organs. The habitats were larger, more complex, designed to provide mental stimulation instead of just physical space. The first transport arrives tomorrow, Paula said, checking her datapad. 5 new specimens from high-pressure worlds. Plus 3 human specialists you requested. David reviewed the manifest. A pack hunter from a world with gravity twice Earth's normal. A solitary ambush predator that could camouflage itself perfectly. A creature that hunted in complete darkness using echolocation. And 2 others with unique adaptations. Are the containment areas ready? Yes. Each one custom-designed based on the species' homeworld data. No generic protocols anymore. Good. What about the human team? Dr. Rebecca Stone, marine biologist with 20 years' experience handling great white sharks and orcas. Christopher Okafor, herpetologist who specializes in venomous snakes from 6 continents. And Hannah Zhao, who worked in African wildlife reserves with lions, elephants, and rhinos. Excellent choices. David had personally reviewed hundreds of applications. These 3 understood predators at an instinctive level. They had spent their lives learning to read animal behavior in situations where mistakes meant death. He walked to Lab 12. The Ravager was awake and moving through an obstacle course David had built. The creature navigated it with grace, leaping between platforms, squeezing through narrow passages, solving puzzles to access treats. It had gained weight, its armor shone with health, and its movements showed none of the stress from those first days. Morning, David said as he entered. The Ravager immediately abandoned the obstacle course and trotted over. It pressed its head against David's chest in their customary greeting. He wrapped his arms around the massive head, feeling the steady breathing, the relaxed muscles. Trust. Big day today. We're getting ready for new arrivals. Other creatures like you. Dangerous, intelligent, from worlds that made them strong. He scratched behind where the sensory organs connected to the skull, a spot the Ravager particularly enjoyed. I'll be spending less time here for a while. Training other people. Teaching them what you taught me. That okay? The Ravager pulled back and looked at him with all 6 eyes. Then it made a sound he had only heard a few times before, a low, almost melodic rumble that seemed to convey understanding and acceptance. Thanks, friend. The next day brought chaos of the organized kind. Transport ships docked. Cargo containers were carefully moved into position. Human specialists arrived and immediately began assessing the new specimens. David coordinated everything, moving between containment areas, checking protocols, making sure nothing was overlooked. Dr. Stone stood in front of the pack hunter's container, her eyes bright with professional interest. It's beautiful. Look at the muscle structure. Built for endurance running, this thing could chase prey for days. The survey team said it hunts in groups of 5 to 7, David explained. Complex pack dynamics. We'll need to eventually bring in more of its species if we want it to thrive. Agreed. Solitary confinement for a pack animal is torture. She started making notes. We'll need to establish hierarchy protocols. These creatures probably have intricate social structures. Christopher stood near the venomous predator's containment. Fascinating. Heat-sensing pits, chemical detection organs, and those fangs probably deliver a neurotoxin. He looked completely comfortable despite being near something that could kill him. Has anyone established feeding protocols yet? Not yet. That's your job. Good. I'll need to observe its hunting behavior first. Never feed a predator without understanding how it naturally hunts. Hannah was already inside the habitat with the ambush predator, moving slowly and deliberately. The creature watched her but showed no aggression. She was reading its body language, adjusting her movements to avoid triggering defensive responses. David recognized the technique immediately. It was exactly what he did with the Ravager. She's good, Paula said. She spent 15 years in the bush with animals that see humans as food. You get good or you get dead. Over the next week, the humans formed a team. They shared techniques, learned from each other, and developed a common language for describing Deathworld animal behavior. Dr. Stone taught them about pack dynamics and social hierarchies. Christopher explained venom delivery systems and defensive postures. Hannah shared insights about territorial behaviors and threat displays. The aliens on the station watched and learned. Dr. Finn attended every training session, his feathers practically vibrating with excitement. You are describing an entirely new field of xenobiology. Conflict ecology, competition-based evolution. We have no theoretical framework for this. Then we'll build one, David said, based on observation and practical experience. Director Rin attended a demonstration where David worked with the Ravager while explaining his methods to a group of alien scientists. Notice how I maintain constant awareness of its body position. The way it holds its claws tells me its emotional state. The position of its sensory organs indicates stress levels. Every movement it makes is communication if you know how to read it. But how do you know what each signal means? One scientist asked. Pattern recognition. I watch the same signal repeatedly and correlate it with other behaviors. If the creature flares its sensors every time before it becomes aggressive, I learn that's a warning sign. If it makes a specific sound when it's content, I learn that's a positive indicator. He stroked the Ravager's armored hide. It takes time, patience, and willingness to admit when you're wrong. Is it safe to be that close? No, it's never completely safe. This creature could kill me before I could react. But safe and trusted are different things. I trust this animal to choose not to harm me, and it trusts me to respect its boundaries. That mutual trust is what makes this possible. Another scientist raised a tentacle, but you said trust, not taming. What is the difference? Taming means breaking an animal's will until it obeys you. Trust means understanding an animal's nature and working with it instead of against it. This creature isn't tamed. It's still fully capable of violence. It's still an apex predator with all its instincts intact. But it chooses to be peaceful because it's not threatened, not in pain, and not trapped without options. The demonstration continued for 3 hours. David showed how he introduced new enrichment activities, how he monitored stress levels, how he provided mental stimulation appropriate for an intelligent predator. The Ravager cooperated with everything, demonstrating the bond they had built. Afterward, Rebecca approached him. That was masterful. You've accomplished with an alien predator what took humans thousands of years to achieve with wolves. The principles are the same. Respect, consistency, clear communication. The species doesn't matter as much as understanding that these creatures are intelligent beings deserving of dignity. The Galactic Council is watching our work closely, Hannah added. Rin told me they're considering changing first contact protocols for high-pressure worlds. No more quarantines. Instead, they want teams like ours to establish communication and understanding. That's ambitious and dangerous, but necessary. There are dozens of these worlds in known space, maybe hundreds. If the galaxy is going to include them in the community, someone has to bridge the gap. Someone has to teach both sides how to coexist. David thought about that. About humans who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to coexist with danger. About the Ravager and others like it. Creatures powerful and intelligent but treated as monsters because they were different. About the possibility of bringing together two very different kinds of civilization. We'll need more people. A lot more. Specialists in every kind of dangerous animal. Trainers, handlers, behaviorists. People who understand that intelligence comes in many forms. Already working on it, Paula said. I've got requests from 57 human experts who want to join the program. Anthropologists who study tribal cultures. Martial artists who understand combat dynamics. Even a few special forces soldiers who know how to read environments where everything is a potential threat. Soldiers? People who survive in war zones develop skills similar to yours. They learn to read body language under stress, assess threats instantly, make life or death decisions based on subtle cues. Those skills translate. David had never thought of it that way, but she was right. The skills that let humans survive on a death world were the same skills that let them survive in combat, handle dangerous animals, or navigate any high-stakes situation. Those skills were valuable, necessary. He spent the evening in Lab 12 with the Ravager. The creature was resting but opened its eyes when David entered. He sat against the wall in his usual spot. The Ravager shifted position to lie closer to the transparent barrier between them. A lot has changed, David said quietly. 3 months ago you were a terrified animal in a cage designed by people who didn't understand you. Now you're the foundation of a whole new approach to xenobiology. You're teaching an entire galactic civilization that different doesn't mean dangerous and dangerous doesn't mean evil. The Ravager made a soft sound. Not quite a purr, but something similar. Contentment. I want you to know something. When I stood in front of you that day, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just doing what felt right. You were scared and in pain, and nobody else seemed to see that. Everybody saw a monster. I saw a thinking, feeling being who needed help. He pressed his hand against the barrier. Thank you for not killing me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being you. The Ravager pressed its own clawed hand against the opposite side of the transparent wall, matching David's position. They stayed that way for a long moment. Two beings from violent worlds connected by understanding that transcended species. Paula watched from the observation area. Beside her, Rin and Dr. Finn stood silently. They're remarkable together, Dr. Finn said softly. I've never seen anything like it. It's not remarkable to them, Paula said. This is normal. On Earth, humans live with dangerous animals all the time. They raise dogs descended from wolves. They ride horses that could kill them with one kick. They swim with dolphins and work alongside creatures that have every physical advantage over them. They learned millennia ago that coexistence is possible if you respect the other species. We never learned that lesson, Rin said. We never needed to. Our worlds gave us everything. No predators to fear, no competition for resources, no pressure to develop these kinds of skills. She watched David and the Ravager. I wonder what else we've missed because our evolution was too easy. Not too easy, Paula corrected. Just different. You developed other skills. Technology, cooperation, social organization. Earth gave humans one kind of intelligence. Your worlds gave you another. Neither is superior. They're just suited to different challenges. But when those challenges meet, Dr. Finn said, like when a death world predator ends up in our care, our intelligence fails us. That's why we need both kinds of intelligence working together. Paula smiled. That's what this place is becoming. A collaboration between different evolutionary paths. Learning from each other, building something new. In Lab 12, David finally stood. I need to sleep. Training session tomorrow with the new human team. We're going to work on reading pack dynamics with Dr. Stone's group. The Ravager stood as well, stretching in a way that reminded David of a cat. It walked to its resting area, circled twice, and settled down. But it kept its eyes on David until he left, watching over him the way it had since that first night. As David walked to his quarters, he thought about the future. More high-pressure worlds would be discovered. More creatures would need proper care. More bridges would need to be built between the violent and peaceful parts of the galaxy. It was daunting. It was necessary. And for the first time in his life, David felt like his skills, the skills every human developed just by growing up on Earth, were not just useful, but essential. The galaxy was bigger than anyone had imagined, and it needed Deathworlders to help navigate its dangerous corners, not because they were better than others, but because they understood things that others didn't, because they spoke a language of survival that the peaceful species had never needed to learn. It was a good feeling. Being needed, being valued, being understood. 6 months after the Ravagers' arrival, Harmony 7 looked completely different. New wings had been added to house high-pressure world specimens. Training facilities occupied an entire deck, where alien scientists learned human techniques for handling dangerous creatures. A library of behavioral data grew daily, cataloging everything from threat displays to courtship rituals across dozens of Deathworld species. David walked through the main research corridor, greeting staff as he passed. The fear that had permeated the station after the escape was gone, replaced by cautious respect and genuine curiosity. Scientists who had once dismissed his warnings now sought his advice. Security teams trained in his protocols. Even the station's automated systems had been reprogrammed to recognize stress behaviors in predatory species. He reached Lab 12 and stopped. Through the viewing wall, he saw something that made him smile. The Ravager was not alone. 3 alien scientists were inside the habitat with it, moving slowly and carefully, practicing the body language techniques David had taught them. The creature watched them with interest but no aggression, occasionally making soft sounds when they did something correctly. Rebecca joined him at the window. Your student is teaching other students now. That's how you know you've built something sustainable. How's your pack doing? Thriving? We brought in 3 more pack hunters last month and they've established a clear hierarchy. The alpha female is pregnant. If the pregnancy goes well, we'll have the first Deathworld predator born in captivity. She looked proud and a little awed. We're making history here. How's the galactic community responding? Mixed reactions. Some species are fascinated. They're sending researchers and requesting partnerships. Others are terrified and want the whole project shut down. She shrugged. Change is always scary, especially when it challenges everything you thought you knew. Christopher approached carrying data pads and looking excited. David, you need to see this. We've been analyzing behavioral patterns across all our specimens, and there's a clear correlation. High-pressure worlds don't just produce physically dangerous creatures. They produce more intelligent ones. Makes sense. Intelligence is a survival tool. Yes, but the implications are huge. We're not just studying dangerous animals. We're studying creatures that might be on the path to sapience themselves. The Ravager shows problem-solving skills that exceed many recognized sapient species. The pack hunters have communication systems more complex than some written languages. These aren't just animals. They're potential equals. David had suspected as much. The way the Ravager learned, adapted, even seemed to plan for the future suggested something beyond standard animal intelligence. Have you shared this with the Galactic Council? Not yet. We wanted your opinion first. Share it. The Council needs to understand that these creatures deserve more than just good treatment. They deserve recognition as intelligent beings with their own rights and value. Hannah arrived with news of her own. The Council is officially approving Phase 2 of the program. They want us to establish contact protocols for inhabited Deathworlds. 3 teams, each led by a human specialist, each paired with experienced diplomats. The goal is to make peaceful contact with sapient species from high-pressure worlds. That's ambitious. It's necessary. We've proven we can handle Deathworld creatures. Now we need to prove we can build relationships with Deathworld civilizations. She paused. They want you to lead the first contact team for a world designated as Priority 1. David felt his stomach tighten. Which world? They're calling it Terra 2. Gravity 0.2 higher than Earth, aggressive megafauna, complex predator-prey dynamics, and evidence of tool-using proto-sapients who hunt in organized groups. David, they found a world that's basically Earth 40,000 years ago. The implications hit him immediately. This was a chance to meet a species like ancient humans, to see what his ancestors might have been like, to possibly guide another Deathworld species toward the stars. When do we leave? 3 months. You'll have time to train your replacement here and assemble your team. That evening, David made his usual visit to Lab 12. The alien scientists had left and the Ravager was alone. It perked up when David entered, rising from its resting spot and approaching the barrier. David went inside the habitat. Over the months, this had become routine. The creature no longer needed the barrier between them. It had proven countless times that it chose peace over violence. understanding over instinct. The Ravager pressed against him, and David wrapped his arms around its massive neck. I have news. I'm going to be leaving the station for a while, leading an expedition to another death world, meeting new species, teaching them what I taught you. The creature made a questioning sound, a rising tone that indicated uncertainty. I know. I'll miss you too. But Rebecca will take care of you. She understands you almost as well as I do. And I'll come back. I promise. He scratched the spot behind its sensory organs. You're going to do something important while I'm gone. Those scientists you were working with today? They're going to keep learning from you. You're the proof that Death World creatures can be trusted, that we're not monsters, that we're just survivors who learn different lessons. The Ravager rumbled, a sound David had come to recognize as acceptance. It understood in its own way that change was necessary. That growth meant moving forward. They sat together for hours. David talked about his plans, his fears, his hopes for what Terra 2 might teach them. The Ravager listened, occasionally making soft sounds, its presence a comfort. This creature had changed his life. It had validated everything he believed about the value of understanding over fear. It had shown the galaxy that Deathworlders were not myths or monsters, but beings worthy of respect. The next 3 months passed quickly. David trained his replacement, a young alien named Torval who had natural talent for reading body language. He assembled his team for Terra 2, choosing specialists who understood not just animals but entire ecosystems. He prepared protocols for first contact with potentially hostile species, drawing on human history of both successful and failed encounters. On his last day at the station, Director Rin called a formal gathering. The main conference room was packed with staff from dozens of species. She stood at the front, her forearms spread in a gesture of respect. 6 months ago, this station faced a crisis that exposed our ignorance. We had built our understanding of xenobiology on incomplete data, assuming all life evolved as we did. We were wrong. She gestured to David. David Cole showed us that intelligence takes many forms, that survival itself is a kind of wisdom, that the creatures we feared were simply beings we failed to understand. She activated a display showing images from the past months, the Ravager learning to solve puzzles, pack hunters working together, the ambush predator allowing scientists to study it up close, human specialists teaching alien researchers, the transformation of the station from a place of fear to a place of learning. Thanks to the work done here, the Galactic Council has revised its stance on high-pressure worlds. No more quarantines. No more dismissing entire planets as too dangerous. Instead, we reach out with understanding. We learn. We bridge the gap between different kinds of evolution. She looked directly at David. And we have you to thank for starting us on this path. The room erupted in applause. David felt his face flush. He had never wanted recognition. He had just wanted to help a frightened creature in pain. Everything else had grown from that simple act of compassion. Thank you, Director, he said when the noise died down. But I didn't do this alone. Every person in this room contributed. The alien scientists who put aside their fear to learn. The human specialists who shared their knowledge. The support staff who rebuilt this station into something new. He paused. And especially the creatures themselves. The Ravager trusted me when it had every reason not to. That trust is what made everything possible. He looked around the room. I'm leaving for Terra 2, but the work here continues. You're building something important. A framework for understanding life that evolved differently than yours, for respecting danger without fearing it, for seeing value in creatures and civilizations that survive through strength instead of cooperation. His voice grew stronger. The galaxy is bigger than we imagined. There are more death worlds out there, more creatures like the Ravager, more species like humanity, and they all deserve a chance to be understood, not just feared. More applause. Then the gathering shifted to a more casual atmosphere. People came up to David, shaking his hand, wishing him luck, asking final questions. Rebecca promised to send regular updates about the Ravager. Christopher gave him a data chip containing all their behavioral research. Hannah presented him with a gift from the human team, a jacket with patches representing every Deathworld species they had successfully worked with. Finally, late in the station's night cycle, David made his last visit to Lab 12. The Ravager was waiting as if it knew this was goodbye. David entered the habitat one final time and sat down. The creature lay beside him, its massive head resting on his lap. This is it, friend. Tomorrow I leave for Terra 2, but you'll be okay. Better than okay. You're the ambassador for every Deathworld creature now, the proof that we're not what they feared. He stroked the armored plates gently. When I first saw you, you were terrified and violent, driven by pain to lash out. Look at you now, calm, healthy, teaching others. You've grown so much. The Ravager made a sound he had never heard before. It was low and complex, almost melodic, and it seemed to carry weight beyond simple animal communication. David could not translate it, but he understood the meaning. Gratitude, respect, friendship, I'll miss you too. They stayed that way until David's body demanded sleep. When he finally stood to leave, the Ravager stood with him and walked to the exit. It pressed its head against David's chest one last time, and David held it tight. Goodbye, friend. Thank you for everything you taught me. He left without looking back. If he had, he might not have been able to leave at all. The transport to Terra 2 departed the next morning. David watched Harmony 7 shrink in the viewport, becoming a point of light among countless others. Somewhere in that station, the Ravager was teaching alien scientists that Deathworld creatures could be trusted. Somewhere in the galaxy, more high-pressure worlds waited to be understood. Somewhere in the universe, humans and their Deathworld cousins were finding their place. Paula, who had volunteered to join his Terra 2 team, stood beside him. Nervous? Terrified. We're about to make contact with a species that evolved like we did. Violent world. Survival-focused development. They might see us as threats or prey, or competition, or they might see us as kin. She smiled. You faced down the Ravager with nothing but understanding and courage. You can handle this. The Ravager was alone and confused. These are organized hunters with territory and tribal structures. It's different. The principles are the same. Respect, clear communication, recognition of their intelligence and dignity. You know how to do this, David. It's what humans have always done. We made peace with wolves and got dogs. We partnered with horses. We learned to coexist with every dangerous species on Earth. This is just the next step. David thought about that. About humanity's long history of turning enemies into allies, predators into partners. About the Ravager choosing trust over violence. About the possibility that another Deathworld species might make the same choice. You're right, he said finally. We're not conquerors or saviors. We're just translators. Bridges between worlds that speak different languages. The galaxy called us Deathworlders like it was a curse. We're going to prove it's a gift. The ability to understand violence means understanding how to prevent it. The capacity for danger means appreciation for peace. We're not here to tame Terra 2. We're here to learn its language and teach it ours. The ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, and stars stretched into lines. Somewhere ahead, Terra 2 waited. A world of danger and beauty, of violence and intelligence, of creatures that had earned their survival through strength and cunning. A world that deserved to be understood, not feared. David settled into his chair and pulled up the research data. He had 3 months of travel time to prepare. 3 months to study every scrap of information about Terra 2. 3 months to build strategies for peaceful contact. It would not be easy. It might not even be possible. But if there was one thing David had learned from the Ravager, it was that understanding was always worth the attempt. Behind him, light years away, the Ravager lay in its habitat and made a sound into the empty air. A sound of farewell to the human who had saved it. A sound of hope that other Deathworld creatures would find the same understanding. A sound that carried across the void, unheard but not unmeant. In the infinite galaxy, on countless worlds shaped by violence and survival, life continued. Some of it peaceful, some of it dangerous, all of it precious, all of it worthy of respect. And now finally the galaxy was learning to see it all clearly, to understand that Deathworlds were not myths and Deathworlders were not monsters. They were simply survivors who had learned different lessons. Teachers of truths the peaceful species had never needed to know. Partners in a larger community that included all kinds of intelligence, all paths of evolution, all forms of life. The myth was dead. The truth was just beginning.